The house was alive with chatter, the clinking of glasses, and that comforting smell of roasted food drifting from the kitchen. I leaned against the doorway, watching cousins swap old stories and my parents beam with happiness at having everyone together. For a brief moment, I let myself enjoy it. That illusion of harmony we all crave. But families rarely stay wrapped in warmth for long. My eyes caught Maya's across the room, her restless energy already sparking like a storm waiting to break. I felt it in my bones. Something was coming. Then it happened. Maya's voice cut through the laughter, sharp and cruel. "You've always been selfish, Laura. Look at you, all these years, and what do you have to show for it?" Her words hit me like a slap, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room froze. Conversations ended mid-breath, and suddenly every gaze turned toward me. My hand trembled around my glass, heat rushing to my face as humiliation wrapped around me like a suffocating cloak. I wanted to answer back, to fight, but I knew better. Feeding her fury would only make her smile. Before I could move, she grabbed a glass from the table. In one swift, reckless motion, red wine flew across the room and splattered all over my dress. The shock in the air was deafening, a collective gasp that seemed to hang in the silence. I felt the liquid soak into the fabric, cold against my skin, burning against my pride. My throat tightened, but I said nothing. Instead, I placed my glass down carefully, lifted my chin, and walked out. Each step I took was softer than the chaos exploding behind me, but inside, a storm was rising. As I slipped out of the dining room, I could still feel the weight of everyone's eyes drilling into my back. Not one person had spoken up. Not one voice rose in my defense. The silence was worse than the sting of Maya's words or the cold wine soaking through my dress. It was the silence of complicity, of people too shocked or too cowardly to stop her. I pulled open the front door, the cool night air hitting me like a slap, sharper than anything Maya had ever said. My chest ached, not from the wine, but from the betrayal. I walked quickly down the steps, my heels clicking against the stone like a metronome counting out my humiliation. My dress clung to me, sticky and heavy, the deep red stains spreading like wounds. I wanted to scream, to throw something back, to make her feel just as small as she'd made me. But my pride kept me steady, locking my anger inside. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, nails biting into my skin. I could still hear Maya's voice echoing in my head, cruel and victorious, like she'd finally won something she'd been fighting for all her life. When I reached my car, I yanked the door open and sat down hard in the driver's seat. My hands were shaking, my pulse racing so fast it hurt. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Red blotches across my face, eyes glossy, mouth trembling like a stranger's. That was the moment the humiliation sank in fully. She hadn't just embarrassed me. She had stripped me bare in front of the very people I'd spent years holding together. My family, my parents, and worst of all, my own sister. The sting of it all left me breathless. I sat there in the dark, my fingers gripping the steering wheel though I hadn't even started the engine. My chest rose and fell in uneven bursts, every inhale sharp, every exhale heavier than the last. The laughter that had filled the house just moments ago replayed in my head, now twisted into silence after Maya's attack. The image of her smirk. Yes, I caught it, even as the glass shattered against my pride, burned in my mind like fire I couldn't put out. She wanted to humiliate me, and she had, at least in front of them. But under the rage, there was something else stirring inside me. A flicker of clarity. She thought she had crushed me. She thought walking away meant defeat. What she didn't know was that silence can hold more power than shouting, and leaving can speak louder than staying. My humiliation was temporary. Her cruelty, though, that would have consequences. because I knew something no one else at that party knew. And the knowledge of it pressed against my chest like a secret weapon. I leaned back in the seat, closing my eyes, letting the storm inside me simmer instead of explode. Every part of me ached, but beneath the ache, I could feel a shift. Maya thought she had the upper hand, but she had no idea whose hand was really feeding her all along. I wiped the corner of my eye with the back of my hand, steadying myself. The night wasn't about defeat. It was about beginnings. And that secret I carried? That was where everything would turn. I sat in my car long after the house lights had faded in the rearview mirror. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, the memory of Maya's voice replaying like a broken record I couldn't turn off. Every cruel word dug deeper. Every laugh that died in the room twisted tighter around my chest. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white, trying to breathe through the storm. Anger had a taste, sharp, metallic, almost like blood in the mouth, and tonight it coated my tongue. But beneath the fury, I held on to something she could never take from me: the truth. Maya had no idea that for years I'd been covering her tuition bills, one payment after another, when Mom and Dad simply couldn't manage it. She strutted around as if she carried her own future, blind to the fact that I was the one holding the rope steady. I never wanted applause, never wanted her gratitude. I just wanted to see her succeed, to spare her from the struggles I once knew too well. But now? That sacrifice felt like a knife I had willingly handed her. Her cruelty tonight wasn't just an insult. It was betrayal, deep and personal, sharper than the wine glass she'd thrown. She humiliated me in front of everyone, never realizing she had been standing on the foundation I built. That thought twisted inside me, bitter and hot, until it became more than anger. It became resolve. Sitting there in the quiet, I knew something with perfect clarity. I couldn't let this go. Not anymore. She needed to learn exactly what happens when you spit on the hand that saves you. I leaned my head back against the seat, staring at the ceiling of my car as if the answers might be written there. Memories started flooding in. The first tuition bill I quietly paid, the nights I skipped dinners out just to save a little more, the relief in my parents' eyes when I told them not to worry. I remembered the pride I felt every time Maya posted about her classes, her big dreams, her future unfolding. She thought she was building that future on her own, but I was the scaffolding, hidden in the shadows, holding her up. That was supposed to be my gift, invisible love. The kind that doesn't ask for thank yous or applause, the kind that sacrifices in silence. But as I sat there, drenched in wine and shame, I realized something painful. Silence had made her bold. She mistook my quiet support for weakness. She mistook my sacrifices for nothing at all. And the more I thought about it, the more I knew this wasn't just about tonight's humiliation. This was years of my effort, erased with a single insult from her lips. The rage pulsed steady, but with it came focus. I wasn't going to scream at her. I wasn't going to beg for recognition. No, I was going to remind her in the harshest way possible just how much of her world rested on me. And when she saw it crumble, piece by piece, she would understand. She would finally know the truth she should have known all along. Nothing about her success was hers alone. And the moment I chose to step back, her pedestal would collapse. I reached over to the passenger seat where my purse sat, the receipts tucked neatly inside. Years of proof, folded and stacked, showing my name on every payment slip. They'd always been my quiet reminder, not for anyone else, just for me, that I was doing the right thing. Tonight, though, they felt different in my hands. They weren't just records anymore. They were ammunition. And I realized, for the first time, I wasn't afraid to use them. The thought made me shiver, but not from fear. It was something else, something sharper, almost exhilarating. For so long, I had carried the weight of being the dependable one. the sister who gave without asking, the one who endured. But tonight changed everything. Maya had taken my silence and turned it into a weapon against me. Now I was ready to take back that silence and reshape it into something far more powerful, something that would cut deeper than any insult she could throw. I started the car, the low hum of the engine vibrating through me like a promise. The night sky stretched endless above, but all I could see was the road ahead, the one I was about to carve for myself. Maya thought she knew power. She thought the family's silence meant she'd won. But soon, she would learn what it feels like when the ground beneath you disappears, and I would be the one to pull it away. The next morning, I woke with the same heaviness in my chest, but this time it wasn't despair. It was determination. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered above the keyboard for a moment, trembling slightly, before I typed in the university's financial office. I knew the number by heart. I dialed it more times than I could count. But today, it wasn't to save her. Today, it was to let her fall. The line clicked, and a woman's voice greeted me. Calmly, almost too calmly, I explained who I was, the student's name, and my role as the one who had been covering tuition. Her voice softened with recognition. She knew me. I asked her to freeze the account, to cancel any pending payments. There was a pause on the other end, a moment of hesitation, as if she knew what this would mean. But I didn't waver. I repeated myself, firm this time, and she confirmed it. No more payments would be processed. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, my pulse still racing. It was done. The cord I had carried for years, the lifeline I had offered without her ever knowing, had been cut. A strange mixture of guilt and relief washed over me. Guilt for the chaos I knew was coming, and relief for finally choosing myself. Maya had thrown her glass, her insults, her venom. Now she would feel the sting of what it meant to lose the invisible hand that had carried her all this time. After hanging up, I sat still for a long time, the silence of the room pressing in around me. I could almost hear Maya's laughter from nights she came home bragging about her classes, her plans, her future. She never knew those nights were funded by my sacrifice. And now, without that safety net, her reality would shift like sand under her feet. The thought brought a cold satisfaction, one that made me both proud and strangely unsettled. Revenge never comes without shadows. I walked over to the drawer where I kept the stack of receipts. Each one was a reminder of the nights I said no to myself, so she could keep saying yes to her dreams. As I held them, the weight of it all pressed heavy in my hands. Proof, undeniable, irrefutable, of what I had done for her. For years, those papers had been invisible, tucked away like secrets. Now, they would become something else entirely. They would be the mirror I forced her to look into. I slipped them into a folder, the edges crisp against my fingertips. My heart beat faster as I imagined the day I would place them on the table in front of her, in front of everyone. The humiliation she gave me would pale in comparison to the truth I was about to reveal. She had tried to strip me bare that night, to expose me. But when the time came, it would be her standing exposed, her pride unraveling in front of the very people she tried to impress. And I would be the one holding the curtain open. That night, I sat at my desk with the folder open, staring at the rows of numbers and dates that told a story no one else knew. My name, clear on every slip, the quiet thread that stitched her future together. Each receipt was a memory of my silence, the times I let her mock me, dismiss me, while still making sure her world stayed steady. My jaw tightened as I thought of the glass shattering against my dress. She had no idea she was breaking the very hand that steadied her all along. The more I looked at those papers, the less guilty I felt. This wasn't cruelty. It was balance. Maya had taken from me for years without knowing, without caring, And when she finally had the chance to show gratitude, she threw it back in my face. My revenge wasn't about punishing her, not entirely. It was about giving her the truth, raw and undeniable. And the truth has a way of cutting deeper than any insult. I closed the folder and slid it into my bag, the sound of the clasp clicking shut like a gavel. My plan was simple, patient. I wouldn't lash out in anger. I wouldn't corner her in private. No, when the time was right, I would let the truth spill into the open, where silence couldn't protect her anymore. And until then, I'd carry this secret, waiting for the moment that would break her the way she tried to break me. It was a few weeks later when the storm finally broke. I was sitting in my parents' living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the curtains, when the front door burst open. Maya stumbled in, her face streaked with tears, her voice shaking with rage. She clutched a letter in her hand, waving it like a weapon. "They froze my enrollment!" she screamed, her words slicing through the quiet house. Mom and Dad rushed over, alarmed, their voices panicked as they tried to calm her down. I stayed seated, my hands folded neatly in my lap, my heart steady despite the chaos unfolding. She ranted about unfair treatment, about how the university had no right to threaten her future. She painted herself as the victim, her voice rising higher, angrier, desperate. My parents looked confused, frightened even, torn between soothing her and trying to understand what had gone wrong. And through it all, I watched, silent, the folder with my receipts resting just inches from my hand. For years, Maya had strutted into this house like she was untouchable. For years, she looked at me like I was small, irrelevant. But now? I could see the cracks forming, the panic setting in as her carefully built tower began to wobble. She thought she could shame me and walk away unscathed. But standing there, tears streaking down her face, she was already unraveling. And I knew the moment had finally come. The moment to reveal everything. Maya's voice grew louder, desperate enough to shake the walls. "I could lose my semester. Do you even understand what that means?" she yelled, crumpling the letter in her fist as if crushing the paper would erase the truth written on it. My mother's face was pale, her hands trembling as she tried to comfort her, while my father's jaw tightened in confusion. They kept asking the same question, how could this happen? And Maya had no answer, only fury. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes fixed on her, my silence pressing heavier than any words. She avoided my gaze, too wrapped in her panic to look at me directly, but I knew she felt it. That shift in power, subtle but undeniable. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding the room captive. The control she'd always flaunted had slipped right through her fingers, and I could feel my pulse quicken as the weight of my secret pressed against the surface, ready to be unleashed. My bag rested by my feet, the folder tucked neatly inside. I slid my hand toward it, the motion slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. My parents were begging for clarity, Maya was unraveling in front of them, and I was sitting on the answer that would change everything. I could already imagine the sound of the folder hitting the table, the silence that would follow, the way their eyes would shift from her to me. The power in that moment was electric, humming in my chest. I knew it was almost time. I finally stood, the room still buzzing with Maya's frantic cries. My parents turned to me, their eyes pleading for sense, for answers, for anything to untangle the mess. Without a word, I placed the folder on the coffee table and opened it with calm precision. The neat stack of receipts stared back, each one marked with my name. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then I pushed them forward, letting the truth sit in the open. Maya froze. Her tears slowed as her eyes scanned the papers, confusion melting into disbelief, then horror. No, this isn't," she stammered. But the proof was undeniable. My mother reached out, her hand trembling as she lifted one slip, her lips parting as she whispered my name. My father leaned closer, his face tightening with every line he read. The silence was no longer complicity. It was revelation. The room wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. I looked straight at Maya, my voice steady, controlled, almost gentle. You threw a glass at the hand that held you up. Now you can stand on your own. The words hung heavy in the air, louder than her screams, louder than her excuses. She flinched, as if the truth itself had struck her harder than she'd ever hit me. And in that moment, for the first time in years, she had nothing left to say. The days that followed were eerily quiet. Maya avoided me, avoided everyone, her once loud presence shrinking into whispers and shadows. Without the tuition payments, the reality of her situation hit fast and hard. I heard through my parents that she was scrambling, begging professors, pleading with the financial office, looking for anyone to save her. But no one could. The safety net she never even knew she had was gone, and the fall was hers alone to face. At first, I thought I might feel guilt watching her struggle, but instead, I felt something else. Release. For years, I had carried her weight on my back, sacrificing quietly while she mocked me. Now, I was free. Every morning felt lighter, every step sharper. I poured myself into my own work, my own dreams, the ones I had pushed aside to keep her afloat. For the first time in a long while, my life felt like it belonged to me again. And yet, even in her silence, Maya's presence lingered like a shadow. She still had that look whenever I caught her glance, half fury, half humiliation. She couldn't say the words, couldn't admit what she now knew, that the sister she had tried to humiliate was the one who built the ground she walked on. That knowledge weighed on her far more than any unpaid bill. And to me, that was the sweetest justice of all. I ran into Maya one afternoon at the grocery store, her hair pulled back messily, dark circles shadowing her eyes. She was wearing the uniform of a local cafe, the logo stitched awkwardly over her chest. Our eyes met across the aisle, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She had once carried herself like she was untouchable, like the world owed her something. Now, the weight of reality bent her shoulders, and she couldn't stand tall anymore. She mumbled a quick hello, her voice low, nothing like the sharp tone she'd once used to cut me down. I nodded politely, nothing more, nothing less, and kept walking. That moment was enough. I didn't need to say a word. The silence between us carried more weight than any confrontation ever could. She knew. I knew. And in that unspoken truth, the balance between us had finally shifted. At home, I sat down with friends for dinner, their laughter spilling through my apartment like warmth I hadn't felt in years. I realized then how much I had missed this. Connection without tension, joy without sacrifice. I didn't need Maya's validation anymore. I had rebuilt my own world, piece by piece, and it was stronger without her shadows looming over me. Revenge, I realized, didn't have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes, it was just living well while the one who hurt you watched from the outside. Weeks later, I found myself at a dinner surrounded by people who celebrated me for who I was, not for what I could give up for them. Glasses clinked, laughter rose, and for the first time in years, I felt truly present. No shadows, no weight pressing me down, just freedom. I caught myself smiling, realizing how far I had come since that night of humiliation. What had once felt like my breaking point had become the start of something stronger. Across the room, through the restaurant's glass windows, I saw her. Maya. She stood outside, alone, watching the joy spill from a table she no longer had a place at. Her expression was unreadable, part envy, part sorrow, part recognition of everything she had thrown away. For a moment, our eyes locked. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, as though the weight of truth had carved her down to size. And I didn't look away. I raised my glass, not to her, but to myself, to the life I had finally reclaimed. She would never say the words, never apologize, but it didn't matter anymore. Her silence was proof enough that she understood. I had given her everything once, and she had thrown it away. Now I was the one thriving, and she was left with nothing but the echo of her own choices. And that was the sweetest revenge I could have asked for.